This week, my guest here in Strasbourg, France, is the European official most directly concerned with the refugee crisis. He's Dimitris Avramopoulos, EU Commissioner for Migration, whose job description includes making the common asylum system fully operational and improving the response to emergency situations. Given that neither of those are a great success, why is he still in his job? Dimitris Avramopoulos, welcome to Conflict Zone.
The pleasure of mine to be with you.
Your forecasting of this crisis with refugees hasn't been that accurate, has it? Last October you said we are at the beginning of managing the situation on the ground. Last month you say it's getting worse. It's not a great record, is it?
It's not a great record, but we are conscious of the situation.
But you're forecasting.
Yes, I had forecasted at that time, believing that everybody would deliver. As you
really?
know,
they showed no sign of delivery.
They
showed no sign of delivery in October, did they?
Well, things have started changing now. But at that time, when I said it, don't forget that we had already set up our European agenda on migration. We had made some very important decisions, especially in Luxembourg, in order to fight smuggling. And then we had two schemes, the relocation and resettlement scheme. As from that moment, it was up to member states to start delivering. And the results, yes, they were very, very poor. Just to give you an idea, 160,000 people had to be relocated between the European Union, and only 400 have
this
been
is one of your
so far.
key policies.
It is of our key policies.
This is one of your key policies, and it failed completely.
No. Don't be
failed.
so categorical
no,
that
but
it failed.
400 out of 160,000
Yes.
is a big failure.
But when you say you failed, it is not the Commission to be blamed anymore. Because
why not?
The responsibility,
you produced an idea that nobody wanted.
Yes.
You produced an idea that nobody wanted.
Let's go.
That's not much of an achievement, is it?
Let me tell you, it's not to play the egg and chicken game. But we are not alone in the European Union. The European institutions, member states, the European societies. It was the moment for member states to start delivering. Now, why member states did not deliver?
But you're supposed to broker deals. Commissioner, you're supposed to broker deals. You're supposed to get agreement before you announce a policy.
We did the agreement.
But you didn't.
The agreement was done. The decisions were made.
And nobody did it. And nobody carried it out.
Nobody, but there was a sort of reluctance. And now let's shift to another issue. Because it has to do also with domestic politics. Many governments are deciding, being under pressure from populist and extremist movements within their countries. They believe that they would lose votes. It is the moment for member states to show leadership, as the European Commission has already done.
Well, what do you suggest they
do?
Ignore the fears and concerns of their own people? You expect them to do that?
Of course not.
Democratically elected governments supposed to ignore their people's views?
So, in other words, you tell me right now that governments do not need leadership. They just want to listen to some groups that are opposite to our policy. Because our policy is defined...
Commissioner, here's the result of Germany not paying attention to the fears of its people. More than 220 attacks on refugee hostels, and a far-right party, the AfD, now at 12% and recommending that guards shoot refugees on the border. That's what happens when a government takes your advice and ignores the popular sentiment.
Our advice is exactly the opposite. We do not encourage the rising of populism and xenophobia. We do exactly the opposite. We remind everybody that this union is basing its existence on a values system. That's why the European project is still alive. Now, if we start listening to the ones who are against Europe, or they spread around fear, then we are not following the correct policy. So let's put things in order now.
Who are you to say what's correct for each individual nation?
I'm not the one to judge what is correct for the others.
People have fears and concerns. Those are legitimate, aren't they?
Of course, but it is not fear that should prevail in making and implementing policies. You agree with that?
I agree that people need to feel secure.
If it were
and they don't,
fear,
do they?
if it was fear to follow, then we wouldn't listen to the wise voices of our leaders.
People
so it's a question also of leadership.
Secure.
I agree with you. I'm
feel
a citizen
secure.
myself.
Yeah.
And from what is happening around, I cannot hide my fear. And I assume my responsibilities, as all leaders all around Europe should do, in order to give an end to fear and open a more auspicious future for our societies.
They're not taking your advice, and they're not burden sharing, are they?
Sebastian, we must be pragmatic. Europe is confronted with an unprecedented pressure. Nobody had foreseen 10 years ago that right now we would have all these influxes of refugees and migrants.
What do you mean they didn't foresee? The signs were very clear, going back to 2007.
Well, if you knew that, you should tell at that time.
You didn't watch the news? You didn't see people dying? In your own country, 2012, you started building walls between Greece and Turkey.
Actually, I do not.
You started building walls. People were dying in the Mediterranean in 2013. You tell me your commission doesn't watch the news?
I'm not here as a Greek politician. I have been, and maybe I go back one day. But I can tell you, since you go back to those days, what the Greek authorities had done 10 years ago was not just to build a fence. They just wanted to open legal ways from the ones who were coming, crossing the land borders from Turkey, and it worked. So it was not, let's say, a non-human way to approach the issue. But it was. Let me finish, please. Don't forget that 10 years ago we didn't have this influx of refugees. There were irregular migrants, and you know, right now in Europe we have a very concrete policy.
And the number was going up
Refugees will be granted
and up.
protection, and irregular migrants have to go back. It is the moment to put order. But in order to do that, it's not to make decisions only here in Europe, but also member states must implement. And now we go back to what was the beginning of the discussion.
The remarkable thing is that you don't accept any responsibility for putting forward a policy that nobody wants.
We have taken our share.
You don't take any responsibility. You say the Commission has done its part. Now it's up to the member states. I'm quoting from you. This is what you said last September.
I want to be very polite in our discussion, but
this is what you said.
Let me tell you what the Commission says. From the very first moment, we took the lead. As I told you before, we adopted for the first time in Europe a European migration policy. Then we had
which you announced in May.
The next stage was the implementation. It was in May, and then in September, October. Last year we worked very hard, and we set up a policy. Now it was up to some others to implement it.
What was the response when you put forward your big policy in May? There was instant objection to it. And one of the ambassadors who was there was quoted in Der Spiegel. He actually said, people realized this policy was dead within an hour. It was dead on arrival.
You can call
Central Europe, Eastern Europe, they didn't want it. Why didn't you clear it before announcing it with all these states?
You quoted someone I don't know, but I can quote ministers from all member states who agreed. It was not this ambassador that was committing his country. It was his minister during the council that took place in Brussels and in Luxembourg. So the minutes are there. You can take a look at that. Now,
and we see the walls that have been built as a result of this policy. We see this. So it's been a really successful policy, hasn't it?
You justify my remarks now.
It's really been a successful policy.
We are against walls. We are against fences. Europe has fought for 50 years in order to take all these walls down.
And you put forward an unworkable policy, didn't you?
So now I understand you criticize the ones who have built fences.
I'm saying you put forward an unworkable policy.
It's not that.
It's a policy that people didn't want.
A policy should be judged from the moment it was implemented. And so we go back to what we said before. Who is in charge of implementation?
You.
Of course not.
You're a deal builder. You're supposed to broker deals.
Sorry.
You're a coordination agency.
You know very well how...
You're a coordination agency.
Yes, we coordinate.
And you haven't coordinated.
We do not dictate. We are here to judge whether member states deliver or not. And member states policy is defined by domestic politics. Let's be clear on that.
You're supposed to
this is what
broker
everybody
deals
knows in
between
Europe.
the 28 people, and you didn't broker the deals, did you? You didn't get your support.
You know very well how this system works.
Well, it doesn't seem to be working very well, does it?
If you allow me to finish my thinking, please. If Europe was a federal system, things could be different. And actually, I belong to a generation that had fought since I was a young student in order to see one day Europe become a federal system, as it is United States of America. But here, it's different. We have three institutions: the Commission, is the Council, and the Parliament that is hosting us today. I know you understand, but it's fair. It's good for the others to understand what we talk about. So
I know which way you want to take it.
The European Commission has taken the lead, has proposed a policy. This policy was adopted. Now it was the moment, let's go back to that, to implement. From the moment the implementation started, yes, we noticed some deficiencies.
And you could have foreseen that and should have foreseen that.
This is what we did.
And should have foreseen it.
And this is what we did. Well, we tried to put everybody in front of their responsibilities. So talking about the results, in order to facilitate our discussion, let's go to the results.
Commissioner, no, before we go to the results, let me just remind you what is on your website, which are your core responsibilities, okay? This is how you sell the Commission, your Commission on Migration, to the rest of the world. Improving border control hasn't happened. Making sure the common European asylum system is fully implemented. It's not fully implemented. Dealing with irregular migration. You aren't dealing with irregular migration. Identifying where the EU can make a real difference in fighting terrorism and radicalization. The jury's out on that. And focusing on the fight against crime that undermines EU policies. And that's perhaps the worst failure of all, isn't it? Because you've created now according to Europol, a $5 billion criminal enterprise in Europe in trafficking refugees.
Let's start working on your points then. It's much easier for you to use these tough words. I try to use responsible words. This does not mean that you don't do. I do it. So let's start from the first point. What was the first?
Improving border control.
Yes, okay.
It's a disaster.
Before you reach your criticism, let's listen to what is happening. Borders control protection is a national competence. Frontex, as far as migration is concerned, is a European agency. We tripled its budget because we were confronted with the situation. We doubled its personnel, and we invited all member states to contribute in order to make this system more efficient. The response was, and is still, very, very poor. We decided to set up the European Borders and Coast Guard, a new agency. It is about to be decided within the next 2 months. Let's see how member states will react on that. We try to find European solutions for unprecedented European challenges. So
that's what you're asked to do, but making sure the common European asylum system is fully implemented.
The asylum
it isn't, is it?
The asylum system of Europe is there. But
it's
let's
not
go back.
Fully implemented, is it?
It is not fully implemented.
This is your responsibility.
You see, logically now, we lead our discussion to where it should be led from the very beginning. Implementation. The implementation, that's why I described before how Europe works, is a full national competence. Now, the question that you raised right now should be asked to everybody around Europe. Do they really want to work in a collective, responsible, and solidary way or not?
Because the Commission
it's
not
has
on their
shown
website,
the way.
It's on yours. It's on yours.
That's my yours.
These are your solemn core
and I uphold what you read, I uphold, and we all fight for that. But under this, what I said before, shared responsibility.
We are seeing crime, refugees trafficked on an unprecedented scale. Unprecedented. Europe has never seen anything like this. We're seeing upwards of 10,000 unaccompanied minors who came into Europe have disappeared. And Europol fears that they've fallen into the arms of organized crime syndicates.
I like our discussion.
This is a gigantic criminal enterprise that's grown up on your watch, hasn't it? On your watch.
In the way you criticize the Commission, can I criticize also you? Am I allowed?
You're allowed to say whatever
Good.
you want.
You too. But you made the mistake. You amalgamized crime and terrorism with migration and refugees. And this is something that unfortunately is fostering fear and anger among the citizens. And this is what populists and extremists are exploiting right now. So when I said it's a mistake, it's not a mistake that you made, it's a perception. And the misconception remains a misconception even if the majority of people share it. But here we are to change it. And we try very hard in respecting the values and the principles of the European Union.
This enormous criminal enterprise that has grown up on your watch. Shouldn't you resign, Commissioner?
Resign?
Resign, yeah.
Or to fight for that?
Resign. You fought. Maybe it's time to let somebody else. Maybe it's time to let somebody else have a go, isn't it?
So you advise the one who is fighting to succumb to the pressure of the criminals?
No, I'm
That's
just
what
saying,
you say.
You've
this
produced
is what
a lot
you tell
of
me
policies.
right now.
You've produced a lot of policies
during,
that countries don't want to follow.
Yes, but
they don't want to follow.
During the last year, we have worked also very hard on that. You know what?
And your mood has sunk in the last 3 months. Your mood has sunk.
You see only the dark side of the moon.
Well, you told us the dark side. You don't see the other. You're very pessimistic about the future.
You don't see the achievements of Europol, and we try to enhance and support even more Europol's role. But there we come to another issue, since you want to go to that. How is intelligence and information sharing going between member states right now? Very poor. Very poor. Because if they were exchanging information, if they had based their cooperation on trust, things would be much different. You know that the perpetrators in Paris, they were located, they had been registered in a Greek island, and then they crossed 3 Balkan countries and 4 members of the European Union. They came to Brussels, they set up their headquarters, and they did what they did. If there was a better, based on mutual trust, exchange of information, they would have been apprehended.
Commissioner,
the same the Thalys attack.
Commissioner, we're now in a state of affairs where the presidents of the 3 main European institutions are warning that Schengen is in danger. It may already be dead. Nicolas Sarkozy, former president of France, says it's already dead. It's already
What do you mean, to agree with what the ones that said that Schengen is dead?
Yeah.
Schengen will die if we do not implement what the Schengen border code is foreseeing. So Schengen is a solution. Schengen is not the problem. And I can tell you, frankly and openly, I'm a fighter in favor of Schengen because it is the greater achievement of our times.
But
the most tangible achievement of European integration.
But 6 countries.
Let me be clear.
You really think they're going to go back to Schengen?
Schengen is not dead. Schengen is in danger if what Schengen is foreseen is not implemented.
So Nicolas Sarkozy doesn't know what he's talking about?
I don't judge other politicians' point of view, but I can tell you my point of view and the Commission's point of view. So we are here to uphold, strengthen even more, and put everybody in front of their responsibilities in order to better protect their borders. And we help them to do so. We have some deficiencies. We have very frequently reports on how the system works or does not work. But what is our job? Our job is to provide all these member states with our support, with our help, in order to better manage the European borders that are identified with our national borders.
And upwards of 10,000 children who should have expected international protection, unaccompanied as they were, by the time they got to Europe, are simply lost. And you're happy about that?
Are you?
I'm not.
I'm not? Who is happy with that?
But you're trying to tell me...
Who is happy with that?
You're trying to tell me about all the things that have gone right.
Sebastian, don't make
these are huge
Don't make this
failings,
kind of dialogue, because I want to go to the substance. This is a problem right now in Europe. In order to better protect our borders, in order to better manage the refugees and migration flows, and in order to save and safeguard all these greatest achievements of the European Union. The question is very simple. Do we really want the European project to be alive, to stay alive? But if we are the generation to kill the dream of the ones who 50 years ago decided to create this common new European country for all of us, then we shall be held responsible and accountable to the next generation.
But consider this, Commissioner.
So
consider
it's shared responsibility.
Consider
Everybody
this,
is responsible.
Maybe Europe,
even the last citizens in Europe.
Maybe Europe isn't up to the challenges. that it faces at the moment. Maybe it wasn't up to the terrorism, the immigration, the political extremism, the unemployment, the euro, the lack of... Maybe it's not up to any of these things. Maybe it can't cope with all these challenges.
No, no.
Have you considered that?
I do not agree with this approach. That's why the European institutions are here. That's why we are all here. That's why President Juncker said from the very beginning that we must set up, create a political commission in order to make it a real government in the future for Europe and to work in the name of Europe.
You know what your boss said, Jean-Claude Juncker, what he said about European defence coordination? He said, if I look at the common European defence policy, a bunch of chickens would be a more unified combat unit.
So let's go to his words.
That's European unity at the moment. Thank you.
Let's follow the logical way of his remarks. Do you agree with me that the political integration of Europe should be completed?
It's not up to me to agree.
No. You're a European citizen.
It's
you have a voice.
They don't want to hear what I say. They want to hear what you have to say.
Because you are also an opinion maker. I believe that is the moment for Europe, instead of defending all its policies, to adopt a breakthrough policy and move towards in a fulfillment of European integration. That's why I asked before the question.
So you want more Europe?
Whether I want more Europe. Because this is the only answer.
You can't handle what you've got at the moment.
We have to proceed in adopting a common defense, a common foreign affairs policy in order to make Europe a global stakeholder. Right now we just defend what we have achieved, but we must not stop here.
But
and all these
states
challenges
are telling you
Mr.
they
Sebastian,
don't want common policies. North against south, east against west. They don't want the same things.
These challenges, I'm talking about refugees crisis, the economic crisis, immigration crisis, are catalysts for more Europe, not to backtrack. I mean, that's how we perceive our role here. That's why before I told you...
Backtrack because it's been such a success so far? You just want to keep on moving forward?
You do not decline in front of the challenges and the problems. You are here to try to solve them.
If you see things aren't working, you change course. You change course.
We have to follow the course as it has been marked and designed from our forefathers.
Even if people don't want it?
Look at that.
You have initiated cases, infringement cases, against 23 out of 27 states for not applying proper European asylum rules. 23 countries are breaking the asylum rules, and you've started infringement proceedings against them. What does that tell you? It tells you that 23 countries don't want your policy.
What does it tell me? That all these 23 countries must comply to the directives and the instructions of the European Union. And they have started already doing so in implementing our common European asylum system.
Pretty slow, isn't it?
A lot of things are moving too slow. But we are here to push in order to step up efforts, because this is the answer to the question, do we really want to keep this European project alive, that I asked you before? And as I said, right now, in front of these very, very critical situations we are confronted with, we have to be more determined. And I can assure you that within the Commission, because this Commission is a purely political Commission, the decision is made.
So,
we are going to do our best in order to move ahead. But let me be clear on that. We are not alone. Leadership of Europe must realize that they have to share this responsibility with us.
Yeah, well, they don't.
They must do it.
They don't. Well, you keep on saying this. It doesn't acquire any more meaning just because you go on repeating it, does it?
And if they have something else in their mind, they must be very frank to their citizens and ask their opinion whether they want to stay in Europe or not.
Here's something on the mind of the British. For instance, the renegotiation of their terms of membership. Council of Europe President has offered the UK a draft deal. Restrictions on EU migrants' benefits, sham marriages, things like that. Is David Cameron going to get his deal when it goes to the 27 countries?
Well, the talks are ongoing. So I wouldn't like to make any comment on that.
Should he get his
deal?
But
I can tell you something. I can tell you something more general. I cannot imagine Europe without the United Kingdom.
The exit campaign has a 4-point lead, so you might just have to start imagining things that you don't want to imagine.
But as far as the final judgment and verdict of the British citizens, it will be respected. But if we take a look back in our history, we shall see that one of the people that had fought a lot in order one day to live in a united Europe was the British people. I just want to quote once again what Churchill had said. Let's hope that today's British will never forget what the great leader had said about 50 years ago.
Okay, Dimitris Avramopoulos, thanks very much for being on Conflict
Thank you for this very challenging discussion. Hope to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you.